Episcopal Church are remarkably intertwined. Let's see how. Three unique events contribute to the birth of All Saints. A canoe trip by a Church of England missionary. B, the bankruptcy of a privately owned railroad. And C, the success of Cordova's Red Dragon. In 1861, a month after Southern troops bombarded Fort Sumter, South Carolina, Church of England missionary William Kirkby canoes west on the Porcupine River to Fort Yukon, a trading post run by the Hudson Bay Company. Kirkby's intense week of meetings with the Alaskan Gwich'in establishes an Anglican communion presence in the territory of Russian Alaska. He is the first to translate the New Testament into an Athabascan language. Archdeacon MacDonald, assisted by his Gwich'in wife Julia, takes over Kirkby's work and translates the entire Bible, the Book of Common Prayer, and the hymnal into Gwich'in. In 1867, the United States buys Alaska from Russian, and the Episcopal Church begins work in Anvik, Point Hope, and Tanana. In 1888, the House of Bishops designates Alaska a missionary jurisdiction. By 1894, the Episcopal Church has 3 missions in the new missionary district, but no bishop. Gold, copper, and coal are discovered throughout Alaska, triggering an influx of miners from every part of the globe. Optimistic Seattle businessmen financed the Alaska Central Railroad to run from the ice-free port of Seward to the interior town of Fairbanks. 74 miles of track are completed from Seward to Kern Creek, just south of Girdwood, before the privately owned railroad declares bankruptcy. Then World War I begins. The U.S. government is desperate for high-grade coal for its new Pacific Naval Fleet, and the Matanuska Valley has high-grade coal, but no way to deliver it to the Navy. The U.S. government buys the bankrupt railroad and chooses to move its headquarters from Seward to Ship Creek. The Episcopal Church reluctantly funds a bishop for Alaska. The Reverend Peter Trimble Rowe, serving in Michigan, is elected and consecrated, thanks to some maneuvering by financier J.P. Morgan. He arrives in interior Alaska in 1896 via the Chilkoot Trail, and he continues down the Yukon River to each mission. He repeats the journey in 1898 with 22,000 gold miners headed to the Klondike. Rowe hauls his own 450-pound sled and holds services for the men on the trail. He even builds a crude boat and is one of the first to successfully shoot the rapids after leaving Lake Bennett. When he arrives at Fort Yukon by boat, he finds some studying Kirkby's Gwich'in New Testament. A few elders remember Kirkby's visit in 1861. Further down the Yukon River, he visits Fort Adams near Tanana and conducts his very first confirmation. By August of 1896, Bishop Rowe arrives at Christ Church Mission Anvik and finally meets the Reverend John Chapman. At Anvik, 16 are confirmed. The original South Central Deanery is visited by Rowe in the winter of 1904 for the first time. He travels by dog sled from Fairbanks to Valdez, 400 perilous miles in minus 60-degree temperatures. he is welcomed by a lively group of Episcopalians in Valdez. In a few years, there is a resident priest in Valdez who serves 3 missions by boat. When construction begins on the Copper River and Northwestern Railway, a subsidiary of the Kennecott Corporation, hundreds of men arrive in Cordova. Bishop Rowe and the Reverend Edward P. Newton build a mission that can be used for church services on Sunday and a home-like refuge at other times. Painted bright red and dedicated to St. George, the mission is nicknamed the Red Dragon. It is open 7 days a week and has a reading room, a fireplace, a piano, and a pool table. On Sundays, an altar drops from the rafters and chairs are set up for church services. The Red Dragon is an alternative to the bars and brothels popular during the building of any railroad, and it makes the national news. Collier's Weekly. In 1913, Bishop Rowe gives his cordial assent to the Ascent of Denali by Archdeacon Hudson Stuck. Stuck and his team are the first to conquer the summit of the tallest peak in North America, but his trail assistant and interpreter, Alaska native Walter Harper, is the first to stand on the summit. All Saints member Don Harper is Walter's nephew. Bishop Rowe knows how hard it is to solicit funds from the domestic and foreign missionary society for any new mission church or missionary priest in Alaska, especially when the white population keeps taking off to follow the next gold strike. Maybe if the government-owned railroad headquartered at Ship Creek is built, a stable population is a sure bet. And in Ship Creek, he says, what is needed is another Red Dragon. President Woodrow Wilson creates the Alaska Engineering Commission, AEC, to build a railroad from Seward to Fairbanks. Lieutenant Frederick Mears, the Army engineer who just rerouted the Panama Railroad, is selected to manage the project from the headquarters at Ship Creek. Fortunately for Bishop Rowe, Mears is an Episcopalian. While stationed in Panama, Mears married Jenny or Jane Wainwright. Fort Wainwright in Fairbanks will be named for Jane's brother, General Jonathan Wainwright. Jonathan Wainwright is known for gallantly defending the Bataan Peninsula and Corregidor Island in the Philippines during the early months of World War II. Jane's great-grandfather is the Reverend Jonathan Wainwright, Episcopal Bishop of New York. The Mears are ardent Episcopalians, and they want an Episcopal church in their new town. Frederick Mears arrives in Ship Creek in May and finds himself not only building a railroad, but managing a city of tents. In April, the AEC constructs a log social hall and a log hospital below Government Hill. Bishop Rowe wastes no time in visiting Mears to discuss plans for an Episcopal church in the new town. A deep and long-lasting friendship develops, so much so that Bishop Rowe gives the sermon at Frederick Mears' funeral in 1939. The location and speedy construction of the Anchorage mission is crucial. Bishop Rowe finds generous funders on the East Coast, thanks to the popular article in Collier's Weekly on the Red Dragon, and sends the Reverend Edward Maloney from Valdez to the tent city for the July 9th auction of city lots. Maloney secures 2 lots in a location that will be immediately visible to all who enter the city by water or rail. On July 18th, the Episcopalians meet in the log social hall, and Maloney conducts the very first Sunday school in Anchorage. the name of All Saints is chosen. The original South Century Deanery is growing. Maloney, missionary priest in charge, now conducts services in Valdez, Cordova, Seward, and Anchorage. He lives in Valdez and travels to each mission by water. When Maloney is blocked by ice or scheduled elsewhere, the Reverend T.P. Howard conducts services in the social hall and in the railroad camps nearby. Howard also manages the reading room, patterned after Cordova's Red Dragon, that is also held in the social hall. Jane Mears and daughters Betty and Joe arrive at Ship Creek by boat. They live in a tent until Alaska Railroad Cottage number 6 is completed for them on Government Hill. The girls love the tent, but Jane, expecting her third child in December, is delighted to move into cottage number 6. She wastes no time in organizing the Anchorage Women's Club with All Saints women Florence Wendler and Della Kimball. The raison d'etre of the Anchorage Women's Club is to provide a school building for the town's 90 students, including Joe and Betty Mears, Myrtle and Clarice Wendler, and Decima Kimball. Schools in the territory of Alaska are usually funded by federal liquor licensing revenue, but Colonel Mears establishes Anchorage as a dry town. So Jane, on behalf of the Women's Club, approaches her husband and asks him to build a school. "I am busy building a railroad. If you want a school, Jane, you'll have to build it yourself," he replies. He does secure funding, though, through the Alaska Engineering Commission. Jane personally oversees the construction of the first school, which is finished in November, just in time for the birth of their son Frederick. Florence's husband, Tony Wendler, is the first clerk of the Anchorage School Board. Ora D. Clark is the first teacher and superintendent. Mears Middle School is named for Jane Mears, Wendler Middle School is named for Tony Wendler, and Clark Middle School is named for Ora D. Clark, and all attend Sunday services at the Episcopal Mission in the Log Social. Jane personally oversees the construction of this first school, which is finished in November, just in time for the birth of their son Frederick. Florence's husband, Tony Wendler, is the first clerk of the Anchorage School Board. Ora D. Clark is the first teacher and superintendent. Mears Middle School is named for Jane Mears. Wendler Middle School is named for Tony Wendler, and Clark Middle School is named for Ora D. Clark. All attend Sunday services at the Episcopal Mission in the Log Social Hall. At the 1916 Triennial Meeting in St. Louis, the last speaker on the docket is Bishop Rowe. He says Alaska is so large he hardly knows where to begin, but he will pitch in anyway. 6,000 people now live in Anchorage. Here we have lots and a guild of 32 women. A clergyman is badly needed, and I want that man tomorrow. In December, Bishop Rowe reports that the Reverend Edwin Wallace Hughes from Michigan is on his way to Anchorage to serve All Saints. Construction begins on the All Saints building on the northwest corner of K Street and 3rd Avenue. In 1916, Tony and Florence Wendler's grocery store is thriving on the southwest corner of 4th Avenue and I Street. Irving and Della Kimball's dry goods store is prospering on the corner of 5th Avenue and East Street. Construction of a larger school begins in the fall. High school is on the 3rd floor, and the lower grades are on the 1st and 2nd floors. In 1918, Decima Kimball and Dreesen Schlossen and Myrtle Wendler Stallnaker are sitting at their desks in the new school. A larger home for Frederick and Jane Mears is constructed on the corner of H and Christensen. They move in after Christmas. With the only piano in Anchorage, their living room is a popular